some deep tech companies, AI companies, whatever, who were basically super impressive but had a lot of problems to get funding, right? And on the other hand, there are some companies which might be not super impressive, but they get millions on just a pitch deck. So how does that happen? And maybe a general partner at Gradient Ventures can help us with that and give us some reasoning from that. He actually started off as a software engineer and a founder, so he knows all the perspective, and he will be interviewed by TNW's tech specialist, Thomas. So please welcome on stage for Beyond the Hype, Tackling Funding Challenges in AI, Machine Learning, and Robotics, Darian and Thomas. The stage is all yours.
Hey, how's everyone doing? I'm Thomas Macaulay, I'm senior reporter at The Next Web, and it's my pleasure to introduce Darian Shirazi. Darian is a general partner at Gradient Ventures, which is a Google-backed venture fund that specializes in AI. He's also an expert on the subject of this talk. But before we get into that, I was wondering, Darian, if you could explain a little bit about your background and what you were doing before you started working for Gradient.
Sure, yeah. So I started in Silicon Valley about 15 years ago, and I joined Facebook when it was still called the Facebook, and then when they were only about 10 people. Worked on a bunch of different projects there, and when I was there, I thought everything basically turned to gold. I was like, wow, Silicon Valley is amazing. So I decided to start my own company, and I was very wrong about how easy it was. And it ended up being an 8-year journey to build a business in the MarTech space, grew it to about 20 million in revenue and sold it. And along the way, also helped start Udemy, the education site, because my college floor mate was actually one of the founders. And then also was an early investor in companies like Palantir, Carbon Health, and a bunch of others that have done quite well. But along that, there were many other companies I invested in that failed for various reasons, and I really realized in Silicon Valley that it's very much a power law community. Like one thing ends up being 1000x, and a lot of things end up not working out. And the function of focusing on how to build a great company, how to find product market fit before investing in the business is really important. And after I sold my company, I was recruited to Gradient to sort of build out the fund and focus on AI investing, specifically AI software investing, way before it was cool. And when there was crypto and all the different tokens flying from the sky, everyone thought that we weren't cool because we were investing in AI. And now 6 months ago, all the crypto founders have pivoted to AI, and suddenly we're cool. So I would say that we've been doing it for a while, and we really do believe at Gradient that the best is yet to come in terms of AI companies in different verticals, as well as horizontal infrastructure applications that can enable AI.
Cool. And during your career, you've experienced some epochal moments in tech history, including the Great Recession of 2008. How does the current financial landscape compare to those sort of historical moments?
That's really interesting. So I am one of the few natives to Silicon Valley. I was born in Stanford Hospital. I grew up at University and High Street, which is the main intersection of Silicon Valley and Palo Alto. And I would say that after seeing the '01 bubble, the '08 Great Recession, and as well as this, I would say that the '01 bubble was by far the worst one for technology. I would say that most people thought that tech was over. We don't have that in Silicon Valley right now. It's almost a renaissance that's happening in San Francisco. In spite of all of the sort of problems that the city has and the crime and the disruption that you may have heard about, AI in general has brought a renaissance back to San Francisco and the Bay Area in a way that I didn't expect it would. And so I would say this environment is very different. It is a new era for us, because in the last era, which was mobile, I would say, the super cycle, we had a lot of companies like Uber and DoorDash that were not high technology companies. They weren't deep tech. They were sort of businesses built on mobile, and you could really found that business from anywhere. You had Delivery Hero. You have many across the globe. Whereas AI is a very specialized practice where you do need a community of people that have studied it for a long time to build new technologies. And there's no better place than Silicon Valley, where you have two incredible universities that produce the top talent in AI, Berkeley and Stanford. I say Berkeley first because I went there, so it's almost self-serving, but anyway. So I do believe that we are in a new super cycle, and I do believe that this is nothing like '08, nothing like '01, and in fact, Silicon Valley may emerge as the reason why we don't have a recession in the United States.
Interesting. And within that context, how do you evaluate investments currently?
We evaluate investments through a bunch of different ways. I mean, at Gradient, our focus is pre-seed, seed, and Series A, very early stage companies. So we're not that affected by macro changes daily or monthly or quarterly. We invest for the long term. Our goal is to realize an investment a decade or more later. That's sort of how we think about it, is we want these businesses to be built the right way, to be capital efficient, and to be able to get to a real outcome, whether that's an IPO or a large M&A acquisition. And when we think about those businesses, we look at evaluating people more than anything else. My markers, and all of our 4 partners have different markers that they like or dislike, but mine, I will say, that are personal to me are really, I look for founders that are resilient, ones that can survive going through hell. I had a lot of crisis at my company, and if I wasn't resilient, I would have given up probably many times. The second is, are you trustworthy? Is this someone that I can sit across the table with, and if things are going terribly, they're going to tell me? And those are really the 2 things that are often in conflict in a lot of people. Either they're very arrogant and resilient to a fault, and they're not trustworthy, or the opposite. They're very trustworthy, but they can't fight. They're more of a research person, so they don't have the combination of the 2. And we look for that combination. And then a third marker, which is the one that I consider a superpower for founders, is being an autodidact, being able to learn anything. And whether it's finance or business, if you come from software engineering, you need to be able to have a diverse set of things that you can learn to be a successful founder. Because you're not going to be able to hire someone at an early stage to do these things for you when you don't have product market fit or when you haven't figured things out. So those are really the evaluation on the founder. On the technology and market, we really look for things that create unique data. We sort of believe that the closed-sourced foundational model companies, they're going to commoditize a lot of the LLMs that exist today, whether it's Palm or OpenAI, or whether it's whatever Amazon releases, Facebook's AI algorithms that they have open sourced. We sort of feel as though you need to build a horizontal tooling product that can apply to enterprise or mid-market, or vertical applications where unique data is created. Let's say law, or tax and accounting, or finance, or sales automation. These kinds of things, you need to have unique data to improve the ability of your product to be unique, and something that the closed source foundational models, Google, Amazon, Facebook, et cetera, OpenAI, they can't just disrupt you very quickly. And we're seeing that businesses that did not follow this, are being commoditized very quickly. Ones that are doing text generation for marketing have been disrupted by ChatGPT, and various plugins in ChatGPT will disrupt businesses that are features and don't create unique data.
Sure. So you mentioned LLMs, large language models, obviously a very hot topic in tech, but for those in the audience who aren't too familiar with them, can you explain a little bit about how they work and also how they create value for startups?
Yeah, I think the real amazing piece, or really amazing thing that's happened over the past 6 months, and why AI has come into sort of fashion, is because we've really seen the combination of computing capability, so GPUs, the ability to process large amounts of text data, and then also breakthroughs where OpenAI actually implemented the Google Transformer paper, but not for language translation. They implemented it for the purposes of linking text together. And they've almost mimicked the human brain. I sort of think of it as when you were a child and you were learning things, the way you got used to language was repetition and also relationships between words. And what an LLM effectively is doing is that. It is a sort of a very large neural network that's connecting all these different nodes of text that it's finding and building relationships. But the really unique piece that I think hasn't actually seen the forefront yet is it's multilingual. The ability for someone that, let's say, is a native Swahili speaker to learn something that is only written in English, an LLM can explain that to them in their native language in the best way possible, because it has the ability to build relationships between words across languages in sort of a human brain-like context. And that, to me, is a huge leap forward. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without the Transformer paper and also the computing capability, because a lot of training that goes into this would have been too slow, taken too long. You wouldn't have the ability to iterate. And also, I think a lot of the large tech companies, Microsoft and Google, have invested large amounts of money in training these models and building these LLMs and allowing them to be used by anyone. I hope that explains it, but I really do relate it to the upbringing of a kid, is that like you're teaching a kid a new language, you're teaching them the relationships between words, the same way you're teaching one of these LLMs how to learn relationships between words and being able to predict what a response should be to a question.
Sure. And what are some of the applications that could emerge from that you find most exciting?
Yeah, I mean, I find there are a number that are very exciting that we've invested in, some that are stealth and some that are public. I would say the most interesting example is a company called Spline, which we invested in, which is Figma for 3D. And they have hundreds of thousands of creators now. They're using LLMs to automatically generate 3D objects. So if you wanted to do an animation of an iPhone floating in 3D space, they can now generate certain animations using these LLMs because the LLM knows what a user would want. That is a very weird example. I'll give a more language-based example is a company I invested in called Casetext, which sort of allows you to better understand legal briefs, better understand legal arguments, and to write responses to legal documents if you're trying to build a case. If you want to do e-discovery, we've also invested in an e-discovery company in the law space that will consume all the discovery documentation from the opposing counsel and then summarize it for you as the lawyer that's going against that opposing counsel. And all that summarization that used to take maybe weeks, if not months, of a lawyer's time is now in 30 minutes. We're also seeing in the medical space, we have a company called Rad AI that can look at an MRI, identify the diagnosis, and then write out potential diagnoses notes for the radiologist, taking a radiologist's time where they may be looking through thousands of MRIs in a given week and basically automating that process so they only have to look at a few hundred, which are more, sort of acute examples or acute diseases, not the ones that are more generic like a broken arm or a broken hip. So I think what we're seeing is the evolution, vertical by vertical, of implementing LLMs to optimize the time and optimize people's sort of brains. It's a lot like a bicycle for the mind, as Steve Jobs said about the personal computer. I sort of think about it as a rocket ship for the mind, where we're sort of taking all these different inputs and allowing you to understand things without reading all of the text. A very sort of amorphous concept you can now understand. Anyone can understand because it can be summarized by one of these large language models. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And digging a bit further into the current trends, where do you see the value emerging now in different verticals?
Yeah, I think that it remains to be seen. I sort of feel as though a lot of the startups that we're witnessing right now, we're in the sort of Facebook platform stage of this era where there were a lot of social games or slide released, pets on Facebook and like these sort of toys that are built on top of these platforms. There are some that are really interesting, like the ones that I just mentioned in the health tech space or in the legal space. The area where I think the majority of the financing is going right now is the horizontal tooling and ML infra space, where enterprises are trying to make use of these LLMs. They don't want to be hogtied to one of the vendors. They want to be able to switch them ad hoc, or they want to be able to build tooling on top of these LLMs to block certain prompts from being sent by their employees, or to funnel their customer support questions through one of these LLMs. That horizontal tooling space is where a lot of value will accrue. It's very similar to cloud services. So software that's built on top of AWS or built on top of GCP, those horizontal services are really where a lot of value is accrued during the cloud era. We're seeing that also for the AI era. The vertical by vertical applications, there are some that are interesting, but it remains to be seen. And we will see over the next 5 years some large companies built that I don't think have even been founded yet in the AI space.
And on the other side of that coin, are there any areas where you think the hype is not going to be delivered on?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So the majority of the venture dollars where I think we're going to see some challenges are where there's content generation but no value back to that startup. So any startup that's actually allowing you to do predictive text for generating a blog post for SEO, there's a lot of startups that are doing that, a lot of venture dollars that are going into that. I think SEO, for example, is like not necessarily going to be something marketers are going to want to optimize for in a decade. And a lot of these companies are not creating unique data. They're sort of being used for spammy reasons, and I don't love those kinds of companies. And it's too bad because a lot of the founders that I see today are building those kinds of applications. What I would suggest a lot of founders do is look at a vertical that has been entrenched for decades, where there's a lot of humans needed, or a lot of human work needed to get the job done, and how can you optimize that? Like, one that I'm really looking for is in tax and bookkeeping. Reconciliation and accounting, for example, that requires millions of hours of people's time every year. We can optimize that with LLMs. That's one vertical where there could be a large multi-billion-dollar company built to automate a lot of accounting and allow humans to work faster and better.
Sure. Obviously, this is an area that's attracting interest from every tech giant, but one of those that has made some big announcements on that subject is Google at the I/O conference. And what did you think of the announcements made within that context of AI?
Frankly, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, we have no insight into what Google does internally. They're really just an investor in our fund. We have relationships there, but I was actually very surprised. I was like, wow, Google actually will win this era. And the reason the conclusion I came to, this is my personal view, is that if we are training these models to sort of learn over time, and we need to provide them with the best training data, it's sort of like if I raised two kids, gave one of them Bing and gave one of them Google. Which one is going to be smarter? I mean, at the end of the day, the Google crawl has been sort of institutionalized. It's like over the past 25 years, Google has been amassing so much training data that has allowed them to really understand the internet and the content that's been produced on the internet, that over time, the LLMs that are based on Google's data are going to be the best in my mind. And so that was what I walked away from, is just thinking that in the long run, we're going to see that Google services in the LLM space are going to be the most powerful because of the underlying training data. Now, that doesn't mean that the ecosystem that Microsoft, OpenAI have built isn't impressive. And so the question will be, which one wins out? I think you're going to see that a lot of these tech companies are all going to have comparable solutions. But I was very, very impressed with what I saw at I/O, yes. Cool.
And did it convince you that LLMs are the future of search?
I don't know. I mean, I think we're still going to be searching for things. It's a different mode of consuming information. I sort of feel as though time connected for humans is accelerating. And so what is going to fill that new amount of time that people are on the internet? Is it going to be TikTok videos? Is it going to be search? Is it going to be LLMs? It's probably going to be a combination of all of these. Some of the biggest apps on the Apple App Store and in the Google Play Store right now are AI chatbots for friends, like people wanting to chat with an AI friend. These businesses are now generating millions and millions of dollars. That's all LLM based. And so we don't know what the future is going to look like. Is it going to look like a combination of search and a question answer chatbot? I don't know yet. And so to say, is it search versus an LLM? I don't think it's 1v1. I think we're just changing how we interact with digital services.
Sure. We're running out of time almost, but obviously we're in Amsterdam, one of the biggest tech hubs in Europe. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the European AI landscape, and if there were sort of any areas of investment that you found particularly attractive here.
The talent in Europe is incredible. I mean, especially in London, also Amsterdam. We've seen a number of companies emerge that are in the AI space. I mean, Synthesia, for example, is London-based, European-based, just raised $90 million, and that technology is incredible. We're going to see a lot more emerge from Europe as well. I think what the pandemic did is it allowed venture to get comfortable with investing globally, and I really like that was the outcome. I do think the epicenter will still be San Francisco and the Bay Area for AI, but there is really strong research, very strong founding teams everywhere in the world. Amsterdam being one of them, London being one of them. We've invested a lot in Berlin also, which I consider a tech hotspot in Europe also. So I'm pretty excited about Europe in general, especially the valuations, which tend to be lower than the United States. So.
And just because we've got about 45 seconds left, so just one quick final question. Is there anything in particular about what's in the future for AI that you think is most exciting?
I think that AI is going to definitely be used for good. A lot of hype and a lot of conversations around AI being this evil, potentially evil thing. I don't see that. I see a lot of work being put into making sure we have responsible AI tools across every big tech company, and I like seeing that. I sort of feel as though we've always felt like technology is going to be harmful to humans. I think that LLMs and AI are going to be an incredible accelerant for humankind. And that's really what I feel is positive about it. And so I wouldn't count it as something that is going to be a dark, evil era for humans or Terminator is here. I don't see it that way. I see it as being a new era, a new way for us to drive growth and learn new things as humans. So Thank you very much.
Always nice to end on a positive note. Darian, Shirazi, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.